Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Great. How are you?
Very well, yes. Good. First recording for the new year. Happy New Year.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
You've changed your position too, the two of you, haven't you?
Yes, we have.
Yes. Mm.
Yes, we
have.
The window we normally behind us is over there.
Oh, yeah. You're definitely not in witness protection anymore. I can see you quite clearly.
No.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
There's the window, yeah.
Yeah. And we've got some art on that back wall from Paris.
Well, lovely.
Any news now that we're back?
My news, to keep it podcast themed, is we watched The Mushroom Murders on Netflix.
I was given a book about it, The Mushroom Conversations. I was given.
There's already something on Netflix?
Oh, it's on Stan or one of them.
Came out like Stan. 2 minutes
That's
after.
Quick.
2 minutes after she got sentenced, it came out, I reckon. And did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I was a cracker. Yeah. I won't say too much about it because obviously we might talk about it.
Might cover it at some point. Yeah,
it's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Now, I really just want to get on to tell you what I'm drinking just because it's visual and it's 40-something degrees and therefore it's going to not be visual very quickly. But Father Christmas gave me a slushy machine for Christmas.
Oh.
So I just wanted to share my homemade Slurpee that I've been and it's zero sugar that I have made, and it's a little less slushed as it was when I first walked in because I put a little bit of vodka on it too. There you go. So I know I'm breaking with our timing, but that is what I am drinking. Look at Swanny's
face. Are you going to brain freeze?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Really sweet. To make it freeze, you have to put extra sweetener in it because zero sugar stuff doesn't have enough. So they're really sweet when you do a zero sugar one, but whatever.
My brother has had, I don't know, he definitely had, I presume they still have it, like a frozen margarita machine. But it came from the US and it blew up, so they had to get another one because I think they used the wrong connection.
These are very popular at the moment. This is the in thing, a slushy maker.
The Ninja or something?
No, it's Aldi's finest replication of the Ninja.
Okay.
Yes. And so it looks just like the Ninja, but it came from Aldi. Yeah.
Oh, well, who gave you that? Santa?
Tony? Yeah. I made him go.
He knows his audience?
No, he doesn't know his audience. I said to him, they've got a slushy machine at Aldi on Wednesday. You have to line up at 8 o'clock in the morning because they'll go in no time. And he's like, you're being a psycho. I'm like, trust me. So he did. He went and lined up, and sure enough, by the time they opened the doors, there were 20 people lined up. And there were already, I think, 1 or 2 slushy machines that had gone out the door, and he was only like the 3rd or 4th in line, and he had one. So they went fast, trust me.
I'm so excited for when Aldi arrives in our neighbourhood. It's going to be amazing. I'll have all the tips.
You can queue up at 8 o'clock too.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
For stuff like that's hot property, yes, you have to queue. But look
how did you know that was going to happen? Because you know how they talk about you going to get one thing and then do they promote it, do they?
Yeah, I saw it on the internet. I was looking up slushy machines because I wanted one. And then someone had said Aldi's bringing one out and it's available on this date. And it was before the catalogue even came out. So then the next time I was in there, I looked at the catalogue and sure enough, it said it's coming on this date. So I was like, right, Tony, it's been confirmed. You're in there,
mate. Give me the Aldi Binger. I like that you call it the Binger.
Aldi, the Binger.
The Binger.
The binge drinker. The Aldi Binger.
It's really good.
If you love Ninja, you'll love Aldi's
If you like a Slurpee, you'll like the Aldi Binger. Yeah. The Binger slushy machine. Yep. It's great. Anyway, that's what I'm drinking. What are you drinking?
I'm on my first DC of the day.
Lovely.
What about you guys?
We're just having a sparkling water, nothing exciting at all.
It's very hot. Yeah. What you need is a Binger.
Hot. I do need a Binger. What every good Binger needs is the Aldi Binger.
It only takes about 25 minutes to get to this, by the way. It's quick.
Is this episode brought to you by the new
Aldi Binger?
The Aldi Binger.
At 5:30, I thought, you know what? I'm going to put on some drink and have a Binger. Yeah. Well, I didn't call it that at the time, but I'm going to call it now.
Binge my way through this episode. If you mix that with your painkiller from your stub toe,
it's going to be grouse. You're
going to be very happy.
Yeah. I'm going to be very relaxed, that's for sure. All right, so we're in a wrong order, but I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarky. And together we are
Trial by Wine.
And a body orange binger. Yeah.
It's really trial by beverages today, isn't it? Or trial by binger.
I love it.
Trial by binger. Maybe we should introduce bingers into the court system so that the jury can have bingers whilst they get entertained.
If it's a hot day, they absolutely.
It's such a pretty word, isn't it? Binger.
Yeah.
Binger. Oh, yes.
Anyway, all right. Well, that's all exciting. Does anyone have a story for us?
I have a story, and it's wonderful that it's so hot where you are today, because I need to take you somewhere.
Story, is it?
Hot? No, not at all. It's just a hot in the city. It's a hot in the city kind of.
Okay.
Well, that's the setting of the crime. Anyway.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yes.
Cheapers.
That made me think of a very famous crime.
Can I do sources at the end? Because I fear that if I give sources, it'll give it away.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate that. So I'll do my sources at the end, but you must remind me if I'm, forgetting. But yes, so I'm going to take us back in the timey-wime machine back to 1986.
Oh, no, too late.
And I'm going to take us to New York City in the height of summer. I just sort of wanted to give you a bit of an idea of the New York that we were looking at. So this was New York before it was cleaned up. You know how they talk about New York being cleaned up? This was 86. It was still pretty
concrete
grimy.
jungle where dreams are made of.
It was loud, it was hot, it was electric, and it was still very, very rough around the edges. It hadn't quite been, some of the neighbourhoods that have been sort of obviously gentrified since then were not that way. Obviously, there were aspects of, the Upper East Side, Upper West Side that were definitely fancy, but a lot of it was pretty crime-ridden. In terms of like imagery, think of like the graffiti on the trains, and it being just really edgy still. It was still like the stuff that you see.
Think of Melbourne nowadays.
a little bit, yeah. Post-clean, or was that like after?
See, Paris was like that back in the day too, a bit.
There's lots of
Melbourne's
places.
got
The
all
thing is,
edgy.
but it's remarkable how much New York has changed.
Melbourne's edginess is in part to do with.
Do you?
Well, everyone working from home, and it's taken a long time for the city to recover from being abandoned effectively. So I think that's got a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, cigarette wars help too.
Yeah.
So this is sort of like a city of many parts, if you will. So in terms of what you're sort of thinking of is like there was a lot of crime. Crime was really high at the time. There was a huge murder rate. But one of the things that was a real problem was there was the crack cocaine epidemic was, at its sort of height. And, there were other things that sort of hip hop was exploding. So there was, all these sort of vibrant sort of aspects of what we think of New York were sort of evolving at that point. Certainly in terms of business, if you think of movies like Wall Street, that greed is good, that was happening downtown at Wall Street. Then the art galleries and whatever else in Soho and downtown was sort of all coming to bear. And all of these different communities and stuff were sort of coming together, and there was a crossover. You see a lot of the Art Studio 54. It was an exciting time, but very edgy still. So, if you were there, you were pretty tough.
Dancing?
Correct. Absolutely break dancing.
Yes. With a bit of vinyl and the boombox going down the street.
Absolutely. And then you think of, what's his name, Michael Douglas as Gordon Gekko. So then there was the other side where they talked about where the word, yuppies were the thing where they'd have their, pinstripe shirts put up, and they were going to bars because, Wall Street, you go downtown. So they were mixing with people who were arty, and it was just a real melting pot of this incredible sort of noise, heat, energy, and the Twin Towers were still there. So if you think about that kind of New York, it was just honking taxis, payphones were still there. Now, one of the images that I've got, and I'd never thought of this before, but I'd read this somewhere, they talk about payphones used to ring randomly because people would be calling into the payphones. So, if you're walking down the street, a phone would be ringing, the taxis would be honking. Well before Ubers, it was just that real imagery of New York that we knew, that we kind of grew up with in movies and dodgy crimes and whatever else, but it was really happening. So it wasn't polished, but it was really electric, and there was a lot going on. And if you lived there, you were pretty cool. I think you were either on the edge or able to handle that kind of frenetic sort of energy and intensity. It was a pretty full-on place. So that was the summer of 1986 in New York. And then on the morning of the 27th of August 1986, a young woman who is a trader is riding her bicycle to work, to the trading desk, so very, very early, and she was riding through Central Park. And as she's driving down, a car swerves sort of past her with blacked out windows, and she's a little bit sort of shocked and thinks, oh my goodness, what's that? And as she sort of takes her focus off, looking down to ride her bike, she looks up, and across her left shoulder she sees, just across in the grass, a woman's body laying underneath a tree. Oh. And she said she immediately sort of knew that her posture wasn't the way it should be.
She wasn't napping.
She wasn't sunbathing.
She was not napping.
Yeah.
And she said, I didn't get a real look, but I just knew there was something wrong about how that body was. She wasn't just laying under, whatever else. So she goes a little bit closer and realizes that it's a dead young woman. No mobile phone. She has to then ride her bike off out of the park to find a payphone to call the police, which she does. And then very sweetly, I guess, and sweet's the right word actually, I just think it's a really lovely gesture, she goes back and she sits with the body while she waits. And as she said, young woman, not much younger, about her own age, she didn't know how old she was. But she said, I just kept looking at her thinking, oh gosh, this could be me. This feels like it could be me.
Could be quite confronting, couldn't it, sitting there?
Yeah, so what we have is a young white woman who has been murdered in Central Park. Now this, or her body is in Central Park. Right. At the time, this is such a big deal because although there's this huge amount of crime, a lot of the crime is gang-related and drug-related.
Yeah,
so
like
in terms of
and
how it's presented is, again, it's another drug war. It's another drug death. It's another, it's organised crime. It's all this.
It's like when we had the underbelly stuff. It's sort of like, yes, that's happening, but the people who are killing each other are all part of this gang.
Yeah. Yes, it's separate to us.
Yeah, you didn't feel like you were going to be the victim of it unless you got caught in the crossfire. Yeah,
exactly.
Swanny, are we anywhere near that tunnel in Central Park where all of the crime happens on TV?
You mean the crime tunnel?
I know exactly where we are. I can tell you where we are. We're directly behind the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Is that anywhere in the tunnel?
I think I know what you mean. Is that where if someone's going to snatch a handbag, that's where they snatch it and then they run through into that?
It's probably closer.
Shot or anything.
Yeah. And there's that other one that they always go to, which is where the lake is, where there's the boat lake, and then behind but that's more for like beautiful shots or when people are supposed to be having private conversations.
Yes.
And they meet there just near there somewhere. And it's like, how private can be? I know where that is. Like everyone's going to have a look, right? Yeah. So it's probably closer to that. I do know the tunnels, I'm not exactly sure. But it is behind the Metropolitan, the Met. So the Met Gala that we always hear about.
Like she should have been in the tunnel, leaned up against the wall,
No, but what I don't. Crime tunnel. I've seen this sort of reenacted, and it does seem like it's just a very random tree with on a grassy knoll. It's not like a well-hidden tree, because if I do know one thing from
you sort of
Home Alone 2 when they're in New York, the Christmas one, when the lady with all the pigeons and the birds are after, and they're always hiding. There's always lots of trees, and then other ones like Elf. They're always running. It's not like that. This is actually quite an open, grassy area.
Quite open, so risky.
Yeah.
She looked over and she could see it from the footpath.
It wasn't particularly undulating. It was like just a lawn sort of area, lawn with a simple tree. It wasn't, hidden per se. It was actually quite in the open. It was not hidden at all. Like anyone would have seen it going past. She was probably just the first person that morning.
Yeah, like you said, Schmidt, if she was on the road and saw it, anyone driving past could have seen it.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting.
If you were looking.
Yeah.
So from the media perspective, straight away, this is like people were saying, when they could hear it coming across the radios they were talking about back in those days or in the newsroom, they said, they were so used to people being murdered, it was not particularly big news. But, and this is awful as well, but they said, a white woman in Central Park, that was big news. So, there was a massive sort of influx of the media immediately to the crime scene. And what they were saying is the detectives, that when they first arrived, they said, normally we're so used to homicides. It's like, their bread and butter, or certainly in those days in New York. They said, it happened in an apartment or in a stairwell or this or the other. And they said the difference was they didn't really know what they were dealing with in terms of a perimeter and where to put the police tape up. They couldn't tell when they first got there what they were trying to deal with. She said, so in the end, they had to do this quite large if nothing else, to try and keep the mob away. So because the amount of press or media who turned up was just quite remarkable from the very outset. That very first morning, there was huge interest because, again, white woman, Central Park. So when the detectives arrive, and the lead detective was a gentleman called Wally Zines, I think that's how you pronounce his surname, Zines. He was quite remarkable, actually. They turn up, and there's this beautiful young woman who has really had to fight for her life, really. That's quite apparent, judging by the bruising and scratching and, the way she's found. So when they find her, she has her bra and her top sort of up around her neck, and then she has her skirt pulled up, and her underpants are found 50 metres away. And she's just been left there in this sort of state of where she's been totally abused. But again, all the marks that are on her, scratches, whatever else, her nails, she's already sort of bruising up, but it does get worse as sort of time goes on. But even at that point, they can tell there's been a struggle. So next to her body, or near her body, there's a jacket, and in her jacket there is actually an ID. So they're able to ID her at the scene. And at that point, they are able to locate her father. And her father is a gentleman by the name of Stephen Levin. And Stephen is Jennifer Levin's father. Jennifer Levin is the young girl who has been murdered. And then, again, it's like watching what you think is a movie, although it was actually someone's real life. Stephen Levin lived downtown in the 80s, it's an unheard of thing in some ways. It's like where Taylor Swift and Carly Kloss and all those fabulous people, rock stars and that, have these loft apartments. And what he was a real estate developer. So I think he was probably one of the first ones down there redeveloping that kind of, very industrial space and turning it into like a home. So Jennifer had lived there with Stephen and her stepmother. And by the time the police get there, the media have heard, or the address has been released. And so when they get down there, a big mob arrives. And you see all of this, it's all documented, but it's all news. And it's crazy. You can't tell you can if they've got a microphone, but who's the press, who's family, it's just all these people swarming into this base of a really, terribly run down downstairs. Terrible. It looks like, 80s New York downtown. To press on a buzzer, Stephen Levin's name there, to get up into the apartment. And then they go up there and they find her father there and break the news to him that his daughter's body has been found murdered in Central Park. And
how awful.
Just devastating. So they end up getting the family there. Everybody starts arriving at the house, I guess you call it loft apartment. And then there's footage of a man arriving, and they're screaming at him, and they're trying to ask who he is, and he's like, "Hey, just shush, give him time." He goes up into the building, and then he comes down. He's actually her uncle, and his name's Dan Levin. He comes down and he speaks, and he says, "This is disgusting. This is New York. This is not where we want to be. I can't believe how lawless it is. We cannot believe this has happened to our niece." And then someone says something, and he goes, "Oh my God," he realizes that her mum might not even know, because the mum is not upstairs because there's been a divorce. So what's happening upstairs is they're trying to contact the mum. The mum doesn't even know at this point. So the mother is contacted in her office. So she's at work in the city, and she gets a call from her father. And her father has been called. So he's now with the rest of the family in Soho. And the dad calls his daughter, who is Jennifer's mum, and says, he's crying when she answers the phone. She's like, what, is it mum? Meaning her, would have been Jennifer's grandmother. And he says, no. And he says, Jen, she's gone. And we've lost her all. And she goes, what? She just can't get her head around.
Who would? Yeah.
Yes. So she gets into a cab and she heads downtown. And again, they haven't told her what's happened. And she hears on the radio, she knows her daughter's dead, but she doesn't know what's happened. She hears a radio, the news report in the taxi, saying the body of a young girl, Jennifer Levin, has been found behind the Met. But she said, at that point, I thought it was an accident. I thought she'd been hit by a car or something. She goes, I had no idea really what was happening. She said, devastated. She goes, and I was in an absolute
Still
state.
dreadful, right? Yeah.
But she said, I hadn't yet found out just how terrible things were. And you see the footage of her arriving and that they're mobbing her. And she's like, it's my daughter, get away from me kind of thing. And they take her upstairs. But there's so much of this sort of raw footage as it's happening because the media was so onto it. It's kind of freaky that it's all there. Do you know what I mean? Like so often we see a reenactment or something's been discovered something crazy. This is from the very outset. You're seeing people arrive to find out the information and their very first reactions. I found it remarkable, actually. It was just really, it felt like I was watching a movie because it felt so emotive. It was so effective, in watching it. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is actually real. I feel like it's been made to look so raw and it's just so raw because you're seeing it for the first time as these people are discovering stuff. So the police and the detective team, they sit with the family and they sort of, talk to them about what's sort of happening or what they've seen. And then someone gets in touch, I guess their boss gets in touch with them and says, right, well, we want you to get to the morgue, get to the body, go and have a really good look. Now that it's not in situ and it's away, you'll be able to see what's truly happened to her body.
Who's being told to do this?
The detectives.
Right.
They're saying, go and really inspect the body now, really go and have a look. Because at this time, they're assuming that they might never find the culprit because they think that it's just some random crime.
Yeah.
So they're like, there's every chance we might never know. We've really got to try and get back to the body now to see how things are. Anything we can. Yeah. We've done what we could in the park, but now I actually want you to go to the morgue.
It's not a controlled environment, and you've got to, it's the forensics piece. Yep.
Yeah. So what you sort of see is this sort of, all the different moving parts of a very early part of an investigation where we've got the family and then looking at these photos of Jennifer as a little girl and, with her sister and whatever else. And so Jennifer at this stage is 18 years old. So she has finished high school. She's about to go to university. In fact, she was heading off to university in Boston 1 week later. So as I said, it was the end of August and, university starts beginning of September in the US. So she was about to move away from New York. And this night that she'd been out on was one of the last nights that all these people and all the friends and all that were out because they knew they were all about to sort of start this next chapter. A lot of them were moving away and whatever. She has, she's just this gorgeous looking young woman. If I had to sort of draw a comparison to who she kind of reminds me of, and it's like all of us. In some photos, she looks drop dead gorgeous. In other photos, she can look a little bit like a teenager. But when she was a little girl, the photos of her are, I don't know, there's just something about her. Like, I'm not going to do the whole she walks into a room and lights up the room. It's not even about that. Like, it's just, she's got this character. I don't know, she's got incredible eyes, full of character. And she had lived on Long Island with her mum and her sister after her parents' divorce. And then her dad got remarried and he was living in this loft in Soho and she really wanted to go and live in the city. So she'd gone and lived in the city. And I think that she really loved that. She loved the energy of it. And she was considered to be very cool. She was a downtown girl. And again, that wasn't really so much of a thing. I think it was becoming a thing. If you think of all the names of areas of New York that Tribeca, Soho, that's very different than the other sort of gentrified part of the upper East Side, more established sort of areas where there'd always been money. So I think that for her, she was they called her like a city girl, and she was very confident. She had really found this independence and she loved living in New York City. She had a great relationship with her parents and a wide group of friends that were both downtown, and she had a part-time job where she worked at French Connection, and then she used to also socialize a lot uptown. And I think the kids from uptown thought she was cool because she was from downtown, and she thought they were cool because they'd always had money. And it was kind of that kind of, honestly, most of it feels like you're watching a movie, like an 80s kind of, these kids were incredible looking. Just, I don't know. I just found it riveting. I really did. Anyway, so that's sort of how she's arrived in New York. And then what they need to try and find out is, where has she been? So whilst they've gone off to have a look at the body, other detectives are trying to find out what the movements, where have her movements been over the last, couple of days, last 24 hours, etc. So they know that she had been living, as I said, with her mother and stepfather in Soho. And when speaking to her, they were like, oh, yes, we know where she was. She was staying with a girlfriend called Alex Legata up on the Upper East Side. So she was up there last night. She would have been going out and she was spending a night at her girlfriend's house. So the police are able to call Alex Legata straight away. They go to her apartment on the Upper East Side and say to her, was your girlfriend staying over here last night? And she was like, yeah, she was, but, I left the bar before her, so I don't know where she ended up. That's just the kind of life we all have, kind of thing. And they're like, okay, well, can you tell us where you were and what the last movements of last time you saw her, what time did you leave the bar, etc. And it turns out that she'd been at a bar called Dorian's, and in brackets, Red Hand, but everyone just knows it. I don't know what that means, but right. Dorian's is the name, and it's certainly on the sort of the marquee of the venue. And Dorian's is a legendary bar on the Upper East Side because it was like the home of the privileged teenagers, really. Like everybody was underage in the place. It was just, not even a secret. If you went there, there was sort of no security, what's it called? No bouncers. If you were young and rich, that was your scene. And all the kids who went there were, incredibly privileged. So from these sort of the Upper East Side blocks, neighbourhoods, and they would all go there to reconnect. And I saw it described by a mother, and she said there are differing levels of this, but it becomes very apparent through the telling of the story that these kids have the most unbelievable freedoms you could ever imagine. And I've read other things about this sort of era where, they talk about us as being latchkey kids or whatever else. Well, this is like on another tier.
Well, they're a little bit older than us.
Well, yes,
they're
and
only
no,
like a generation older than us. Like what?
Oh, yeah. So at the time,
she's 18, and
yes,
we were.
But there were people in the club who were like 16.
12.
It's no different. I don't know if you've seen the. Well, you will have
14,
seen.
I can't do maths. 14. She's only 4 years older than us. So hang on, there are people in the club who are what? 16.
Like someone 16. Like
yeah,
they're young.
74. This is 86, isn't it?
84.
Yeah, so it's 10. So
86.
I would have been 12.
Yes.
So they're not much.
I
My point
see what you're
is,
saying.
they're not much older than us. They are our generation virtually.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
So I think we had a lot of freedom, I've got to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely true. So it's not to say that we weren't going to clubs and bars.
I
and
wasn't
doing
going to clubs at
but
16,
this was
no.
like
In
another
New York.
level.
Yeah.
And what they were saying is because in New York they don't have malls, whatever else, parents thought if they were all en masse, they were safe.
Oh, safe.
So
yeah, fair
going
enough.
to clubs, they were going to like proper discos. They were going to Studio 54, like all this sort of stuff. And they were all so well connected. They were still turning up dressed as kids, but the cool kids did this. And the club promoters actually would invite them in. So a lot of the people that were interviewed were like, oh, absolutely. I was going there since I was, 15, 14 years old. And there were all these, promoters that would get us in there. So these kids were just roaming that city, going to, one fabulous bar to, when I say fabulous bar, one bar they wanted to go to, but a lot of it was done in people's private homes. And what they were saying is there was so much time when these parents just weren't in town. They were in their country estate, or they were at the Hamptons, or they were in Europe, and they would leave these kids and their homes or whatever, sometimes for weeks, months, and the kids would just go from one place to the next and just move around. And the parents were kind of not particularly visible. They were just young, privileged kids just doing what they wanted to do and hanging out. What was interesting also about Jennifer was that she was part of that scene, but not necessarily of it. So as I said before, she had lived on Long Island, which is really not that cool at all. And then she had been downtown, and she wasn't a WASP. And I don't know if you know what a WASP is, but, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Something, yeah.
Protestant, yeah. When you think of sort of like people in New York in the 80s, that preppy sort of look, that's what is a WASP. And then there are derivatives of that are yuppies and whatever else.
Yeah.
But she wasn't. She was Jewish. And by all accounts, people were like, they just thought she was a bit different and interesting, but they all seemed to get along fabulously. Whereas everybody else, this sort of look that was sort of this uptown look, is what we know as preppy. And when you see a lot of the kids, they are all dressed sort of like, popped collar, beautiful hair, like Ralph Lauren, totally that sort of Ralph Lauren sort of polished American athleisure wear, or not even that sort of, I think they call it American fashion. I don't know. Anyway, but you get the idea. These kids were doing all this stuff in what is their 9th and 10th grade. So they were very young, but they were leading very fast lifestyles. And there was also a hell of a lot of drinking and drugs involved and loads of sex and partying. And it was just sounded like a lot of fun, really, for the most part. And it was just that it's all good until it's not, right, as often is the case.
Yep.
When the detectives went back to the morgue and they were able to look at Jennifer's body, it was only worse than what it had been when they'd seen her in the park. The bruising had sort of become much more significant, and her throat was absolutely covered in strangulation marks. Like it was horrendous. Like it was really bad. She had marks around the top of her lip that were like these half moons, and they realised it was her fingers where she's trying to
get a hand off her or
to get someone. Yep.
Oh, my
she had bruises on her legs. She had scratches all over her. Like her fingernails were bruised. Like all under her nails are like dark. Like I've seen the photo. I've never seen it.
So much pressure.
The pressure.
On them.
Yep.
Oh God.
She had I think it was her left eyeball was sort of protruding.
Is that from strangulation?
Yeah, and there was something. There was that, and I don't know. It was just maybe it was the nails, but
was it tongue?
No,
but
it was.
That can happen.
And then I'd heard one of the detectives talk about the fact they thought there was like a bezel or some mark from a watch or something.
Oh right.
Yeah. So I can't find my notes, but yeah, she was not in a good way. And when the detectives saw that, they were like, "This is really
very personal."
Yeah, like this is full on. So going back to Alex Legata, who was the first person who said, "Oh, look, she's been at Dorian's," whatever else. They go to Dorian's, the bar, and they start to try and piece together her friends, who she was with, who was at the bar that night, who was the last person to see her. And what they're able to do is they're able to work out, well, there was, this lot, they speak to, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them, and they're like, well, I left and she was still there, and I left and she was still there, and I left and she was still there, and I left and she was still there. But everybody kept saying the last person that they saw her with was this guy who was a friend of theirs.
It's like pass the parcel, isn't it? Like, no,
it is a little bit.
Layer
and
off.
And it's really interesting because none of them are like, it's weird. Like none of them seem even that bothered at this point. It's kind of weird. They're like, oh no, they're just all friends. It's all fine. Anyway, it comes to bear that the last person that she is seen with is a young man called Robert Chambers, and Robert Chambers is part of the gang. Like he's
Deirdre Chambers. What a coincidence!
He is this. Well, there's only one way to. He's incredible looking. He's 6'5", so got a good presence. And he has these piercing. I can't tell if they're blue or green because when you see different photographs, they've photographed differently, but they are those really clear, beautiful eyes. He is a pin-up for 80s prep. I mean, it is ridiculous. The floppy hair, the pop collar, the whole thing, the big coats in winter, and, just a remarkable looking young man, to be perfectly honest. And he is the last person that she's seen with. So in going through all the different people that were there, and they were, oh, yes. And then I saw Alex talking to such and such. And then I saw Jennifer. Oh, yes. And when I left, Jennifer was talking to Robert Chambers. So they are able to track Robert Chambers down, and they go to the home that he lives in with his mother. And Mrs. Chambers answers the front door.
Is it Deirdre?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, it's Phyllis, actually. Phyllis.
Phyllis Chambers. What a coincidence.
Phyllis Chambers answers the door and says hello. And they're like, we'd like to speak to your son. Is he home? And she said, yes, he's asleep. So she goes and gets him. He comes out and talks
He's had a big day. Oh, no, he's been for a while.
He's had a big night.
Later, isn't it? Not the next morning. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So he comes out, and the first thing that the detectives notice, and don't give any of it away, of course, is he has scratches all over his face.
Right.
So they don't give away the game, but they go, oh, hi, we're just checking in. We're looking for anyone who's seen a woman that was at a bar last night who we believe that you're friends with has been found in Central Park. and he's super helpful, like quite charming, really. And he voluntarily offers to go and help them by going down to the cop shop. He doesn't even, I don't think they even get to ask him before he says, will that be helpful, kind of thing. And the way that the detective who's working with him at that point says, I could not believe how much of a part of a super rich kid this kid looked like. He said it was quite wrong. And interestingly, the interview that's done at the police station is all filmed and it's for all to see. It probably is some of the best footage of him. He looks incredible. He's in a white short polo shirt. His hair's beautiful, and it's very old and grainy. You can't really see a lot, but like he just looks impeccable. Do you know what I mean? He looks like such a beautiful specimen of a man with, as the cops describe it, tremendous presence. However, when he shook one of the detective's hands when they first got to the police station, the detective noticed on his right hand it had an injury, and he said he would describe it like an injury that a boxer gets, and it's based on like an impact fracture. He said so he could see the damage done up here. He said so he's got the scratches on his face, he's got this here, and he's presenting as a very calm, very in control, incredible presence, very rich, but very polite, beautifully spoken, entitled, but not arrogant.
Yeah,
very composed, very helpful, charming.
It just looks
young
like
man.
he's been in a bit of a scrap.
It kind of freaks me out when you think of that image of it being so perfect, and yet he's still presenting with all this stuff and still able to keep that cool sort of demeanor about him, as opposed to going, they can see all this. No, not a wrinkle. Like he's just, no, how can I help you? What can I tell you? And so the detective said, the whole idea is that we get him to talk. And so they're talking for us. We want to get him on side, and they're chatting and they're chatting and they're chatting. So he finally sort of says, so tell me, what happened to your face? Like, how did this happen? He goes, oh, my cat. And explains how he threw the cat up in the air and then the cat landed on him. And he goes, oh, my God. And he goes, and if you think that's bad, you should see my chest. He then stands up and pulls up his shirt and he's got, scratches on his body. And he's like, right.
Get up the cat as well.
Yeah. Ooh! So after they've done all this sort of like building rapport with him or whatever else, they call like the DA and say, I think you need to get down here. This kid is starting to like, because then as the hours go, I think they're like interviewing him for about 7 hours by the time he sort of starts to crumble. And they get this guy in, they start to interview him. He's like, I don't, tell me again what happened. Because what he's saying is, I left Dorian's with Jennifer Levin, but we were just talking. She's a nice girl, but, she's more interested in me. I'm not really interested. And we parted ways. We went different directions. So he maintains that line. And then when the other guy comes in, he says that they walked off down, and I'm going to forget the street. I think it was East 84th Street, which is a street, whatever the street was, whatever the number was, it heads down to the Met and Central Park. So he's basically saying, I'm on that route with her. The guy goes, oh, so you're saying that you were headed to the park with her, kind of thing. And this is when the story starts to get a little bit convoluted. I did this, I didn't do that. And a lot of the interview is him sort of saying, look, I just couldn't get rid of her. Ask my friends. Like, I'm not interested in her. Clearly she's interested in me, and I don't want to sound aggressive or rude or, but I'm just not that into her, and she's clearly very into me. I've got a girlfriend or whatever else. I'm seeing this other girl called Alex Nat, and he kind of just sort of talks around it, and then he ends up sort of being pushed to a certain point. He says, look, we get into the park, and she really, she was saying that she wanted more from me than I was willing to give, and I was like, I'm not interested. I just want to go home. Anyway, then she was like, I just want to talk, and he's like, and she was great to have a chat. She was like, I couldn't kind of tell where we were going next. And then he sort of goes, oh, actually, well, what happened was she was on her knees, and all of a sudden she started scratching me and going whatever else. And I was like, hey, I'm not having any of this. I'm going home.
On her knees, and he's 65.
Yeah, I know.
And his scratches on his face and his chest.
Well, I don't know. He must be on his knees as well, I presume. But he says
He's lying down.
which
She's
I thought was a
6'5",
very odd kind of place to.
Weird.
It's like you're like a play
A
fight. Kind of.
tiger.
I was like,
What vision's going on in his head when he's making
this
that
is him going. Yeah, exactly. What story am I telling?
God.
So then
he's
he goes from that.
6'5", so on a
Well, I
knees,
suggest he was saying he was down the ground too, or something. I don't know. Anyway, again, it was just a weird. I just thought it was a weird thing to say. I didn't know why he had to say she was kneeling, and because I was like, I just felt like she was clawing and desperate, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, he says he sort of calms it down, talks sort of. Anyway, then she says she's going to the toilet. Anyway, then but he's still going to wait for her. I don't know where she's going to the toilet in the park, presumably by the tree or something. She then comes back, and first of all he says that she grabs him from behind like this. And then he quickly changes his mind and says, oh, no, then she's got my arms behind. And she tied his hands together with her underpants, her knickers, her panties.
Oh, yuck.
So that's behind her. Yeah, I know. I have to tell American. So he claims that he's on the ground leaning back with his arms behind because, he's such a feeble little.
Because he's a
6 foot 500 kilo.
But sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she's like this 5'4" petite, 18-year-old woman. Anyway, so from there, she tied his arms behind him with her underpants. She then sits on his chest, facing away from him. She undoes his pants. She pulls his pants down, and then she starts to violently jerk him off.
Oh, right.
She says, and he says she's hurting him, and he's saying, stop, and she won't stop. So then he finally gets his left arm free, and he grabs her and belts her to get her off, and she flies off, and then she's dead under the tree.
Oh, that explains the strangulation mark. So yeah, that's a good story so far.
And the bruising and everything else. Yeah.
Imagine the detectives listening to this.
The amount of pressure on the fingernails that they've bruised, and the half moons in her face where she's trying to
showing photos
take
and still
hands away. Oh, come on!
But that's from like using one hand to go boom like that. Anyway, so.
I'm amazed at the detectives who would be sitting there knowing what they know, listening to it going, my poker face would just be giving that away completely.
Absolutely. So then they say to him, what did you do then? And he said, well, he already calls her a body or something. And they're like, how did you know it was a body at that point versus someone, she was alive kind of thing. Oh, well, and then he says, I could tell she's dead or whatever else. And they're like, well, what did you do to help? Did you give a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation? And he's like, no. No.
She's dead.
What did you do? He went and sat. No. He went and sat nearby and watched. So they were like, does that mean you were what was going to happen to the body and who was going to discover it, etc.? So they were saying to him, does that mean you were still there when the police arrived? He's like, yeah. So he said, he said that he's sat at a distance watching. How no one noticed him, I don't know. What they would be looking for, I don't know. He must have been somewhat concealed or a little bit further away.
But he didn't even come up after the police arrived and say, oh, I had something to do with this. I was violently
raped by this woman.
Raped off. And
Whacked off.
Go on, wake me off, love.
Probably raped off, whatever.
I just like the way, because he's talking to a group of men, he just says,
she violently
started jerking me off. And then it was just and then someone else says something to at one point. He goes, would you like someone if they did that to your balls? And I'm like, he's...
My God, what? But also you would think he would have said that this terrible thing happened and I've been in shock, but I was involved because, oh my God. Anyway, no, he just sat around watching.
So he's saying that he has done it in self-defense because she was sexually attacking him. And to his credit, whilst he's remaining relatively calm at one part of the interview, the guy's saying to him, I've been in this business for a long time and I've never had anyone say to me that they were raped in Central Park by a woman. I've had it the other way around many times.
Yes, but it can happen.
And he said it can
with
happen.
A hand job.
Get off that. I said get off that.
I was violently raped with a hand job. Where are you, mate?
Anyway, so the guy sort of going, come on. But he sort of says, I know that, men can be right. And he's right. men can be raped. And of course, remember, this is going back to 86. So, again, at that point, people really probably didn't think that men would often end up in a situation. If they did, they probably didn't come forward. But so he's kind of, leaning into that.
Hand job is a moot point, though, isn't it? Really, from the detective's point of view.
Violent hand job. Anyway, so at that point, he sort of says, well, thanks, I'm done. They're like, oh, no, you're not done.
I don't think so, mate.
And the detectives, this is where we take a bit of a turn, where the detectives say at this point, they're like, well, we didn't think that was going to be turning out quite so simply as it was. And, of course, these things never turn out like the way they hope they will. And then it becomes complicated for a whole host of reasons. But he has, at this point, admitted that he accidentally killed Jennifer Levin. What happens next is really, looking at this many decades later, not that surprising given the American appetite for such a thing, but it was described as being the sort of the crime, not the crime of the century, like the crime case, the what do you call that? The trial. The trial of the century before OJ. So they said before OJ, this was the one. Okay. And they said because it spoke to so many different people about different things. People were genuinely intrigued, and the way the tabloids were operating. And it comes back to this sort of imagery of what was New York like at that time. This was before social media. This is when people were desperate to grab. Remember, like there was a morning newspaper, an afternoon newspaper, and that was where you were getting your headlines. So all the headlines all around town, like all from the newsstands. Do you know what I mean? And then the nightly news. It wasn't this instant kind of thing. People were waiting for the next tidbit, and it was all about this salacious kind of, what do they know now about her? What do they know about him? These people who were rich. People love that. Beautiful, well-connected, all of these things that people just, salivate over. It was this fabulous sort of, I guess, perfect storm in one way of, the back end of summer, the way the media was just really starting to get an angle on how they could get the whole sort of country involved and everybody, really in sort of getting into that court, trying to get into the courtroom to see what was happening next, really digging deep, trying to find out, this angle and this angle, because they were trying to keep it relevant and newsworthy from morning to afternoon to night. It was the big story. And as often happens in these things, a lot of what is then shared isn't necessarily accurate or fair or right, but it sells newspapers. And we all know how that works. And the tabloids were going nuts. I think, what are they, like the New York Post, and there was a couple of others that I can't remember the names of that don't exist anymore, but really trashy. And, of course, one of the things that they always do is let's go to what was the woman doing in Central Park at night, because the thing that everyone keeps coming back to, and it must have been very much of that time.
Raping a 6'5" man, violently jerking him off.
Taking him into Central Park seemed to be a big theme for people. They were like, why would she do that? Why would she go? Yeah. Why would she go into Central Park? Everyone knows you don't go to Central Park. It was like it all started to switch and become, why would she do that? Why would she put herself in that situation? She was on a death wish kind of like they honestly it changed.
I mean, you'd go into Central Park with someone who's 6'5" if you felt relatively safe, and you didn't think that he was going to rape and murder you.
Correct. So
because you knew him, he was one of the gang.
Well, more than that, what kind of things do they uncover? So it turns out that he'd been in a relationship with her.
Oh no, he hadn't. She kept after him, but he didn't want anything, he just had to keep telling her no.
So it's not that he didn't have a girlfriend. I think he had this other girlfriend, and the other girl was very young, this Alex, who ends up becoming an actress. Like, she's got her own profile now in real life. She was 16 at the time. He was 19. Ew. And she said she was so taken with him that this older, gorgeous man would pay attention to her.
How old was he at this point?
19. Oh, so he'd already gone to university. He'd gone to uni in Boston.
Right.
But
he wasn't like 25 or
No, he was 19. And so there's this girl called Alex that he was she thought she was, they were dating, and he did say that he was dating her. But there were obviously others, and Jennifer Levin was one of them. And so Jennifer Levin had described him to friends as someone that she said he was a bit of a lost soul, and they'd been having sex, and I think it was a bit of a summer kind of fling kind of thing, so they'd been catching up. So I don't think he wasn't the great love of her life, but they were in like, you know, what do you call it, a situationship you call it these days, whatever else, or they were, you know, catching up and getting it on and going to parties and shagging. Exactly. And so on the night at Dorian's, Alex was supposed to have had a date with Robert. And when he arrived hours and hours late, and he walked in, he kind of looked at her and then continued walking off. So she was like, hang on a tick, who do you think you are? Mm-hmm. And she said, I just got so worked up. And she goes, well, probably a little bit dramatic, really. She goes, but I was 16. So she walked over and she dumped these condoms on his lap and said, well, you're not going to be using these with me. And she said he was, you know, really embarrassed, whatever else. And she said, I didn't actually leave then. I stayed a little bit longer, but then I did leave. But she said, I was so upset and angry with him kind of thing. And she said that she knew Jennifer Levin. And she said on that night, Jennifer Levin kind of spoke to her, or Jennifer Levin's friends might have giggled at her or something. There was some kind of, you know, you could imagine some girly bullshit where they knew that he thought he was dating her and she's screwing him and all that kind of stuff. But nothing terrible happened. There was just they had seen each other on that night. So all this to say that, you know, Robert's, let's say, dating Alex and has definitely had sex with Jennifer Levin on a number of occasions, and they had been hanging out a little bit, and she had told her friends that. But again, you know, no big deal. But what ends up happening is when they find the lawyer to represent his family, they get someone who is just ruthless. Mm-hmm. And he says his only objective is to look after his client. He doesn't care at what cost anything else comes to anybody else. That is his only position. So his whole job was to absolutely destroy Jennifer Levin's
character.
Yeah. Correct.
So just to check, in terms of the defence he's running, I get that.
Yep.
His client has admitted, though, to accidental, like manslaughter. Is that the charge? What's the charge he's trying to get him off?
At that point, I don't know. Well, I think they want murder, but I think they're probably...
Right.
I'm not quite... He won't say. So he's off at Rikers. I love to get to say Rikers. And, you know, when he's being interviewed, this guy is slick. You know, he's in front of this incredible artwork. And he's got some other, like there were some other cases that he'd done before that were really high profile. And he is just this, again, like a TV character, such an American showman when it comes to law and knowing his way around it. And the way he speaks, he goes, well, yes, you know, I can't speak to that. But he said, you know, my client was, you know, sexually assaulted, battered or assaulted in the part, you know, and I can't say more than that, but, you know, he was, you know, defending himself kind of thing. And
he was the victim here.
He's he's totally the victim, and, you know, it's gone terribly wrong, but, you know, he was the one who was protecting, you know, defending himself.
Sure.
They haven't discussed the strangulation marks yet, have they?
No, we haven't got to that.
No, so that all happened by accident when he hit her the once to knock her off when she was assaulting him.
It sounds like the bit of evidence that would end that conversation of, I just smacked her. No, she's got severe strangulation marks.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now the representing the state. Now, I saw this mentioned once and I couldn't find it again. I feel like the lady who represented the Levins, she feels like she's got something to do with Law and Order Special Victims Unit, because I think that show is based on her setting up the sexual violence.
Oh, the SVU.
Sex crimes.
In real life. I think the sex crime thing, she sort of is the one that has a major role in that. This is the woman.
She's the real Olivia Benson.
She is. And I had written her name down. It'll come up. I'll find it later.
Dun, 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 dun,
oh, it's Olivia Benson.
Dun, 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 dun.
Linda Fairstein is her name. She said, oh my God, you know, she knew what this guy was going to be like, the other attorney. And what they do is, so Linda and the detectives can see what's happening, and they can see what's going on in the media, and this well, they end up, it was slut shaming before it was slut shaming. She was promiscuous. All these kids were promiscuous, promiscuous. It's like she deserves it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they did this thing where they went and they They got her diary, but it wasn't like a, oh my God, I feel this way or whatever else. It was just like dates and times, people that she was catching up with. And they were sort of saying, oh, this is how many people she was seeing, how often, whatever else. I was like, just grubby kind of stuff. Anything that try and make her out
just shit
to be.
defense. It's just,
yeah.
So
what do we know about Robert Chambers? What did they unearth? Who was this incredibly, what did they say, the look of a super rich kid? Turns out that he really was not that. It was all a little bit of a facade. So Robert Chambers was born on the 25th of September, 1966. And as I said before, Mum Phyllis. Phyllis was an Irish-born nurse, and Robert Chambers Sr. worked for MCA Records and later in video cassette distribution. So they are not from old money. They're not really from any money. And they had initially lived in the working class neighbourhood of Jackson Heights in Queens before moving to Manhattan. Where things get quite interesting is it's through his mum. So his mum, as a nurse, a private nurse, she is working for really top-end families. And at one point, she even works for Jackie Kennedy. And I think what Mumsy thinks is, you know what? I've got this incredibly good-looking son, and he's smart, and he's, could actually really be someone one day with the right kind of breeding if we can get him in the right places. So she works exceptionally hard. And as I said, she can see how the other half lives. She's working for the other half. And I think through connections with them and also through connections with the church, because she's Irish Catholic, she makes sure that he's well placed and he gets into schools. And then from there, he sort of gets scholarships and whatever else. He's a young chorister. Is that the right?
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. So he's kind of at the right place all the time. He just can't stay there. And what I mean by that is he keeps getting kicked out of these schools. So of like exclusive prep schools in New York, he goes to a school called St. David's. He goes to another one called Chode, which apparently is very famous. Another one called Browning Day School.
Doesn't that mean something else?
I think it does. And he ends up at a school called York Prep. And I think York Prep is the one that he probably finishes at. And when they approach that school and say, tell us about this student of yours, Robert Chambers, in the notes about him, he's described as extremely charming and extremely handsome in the notes of the school. But then it goes on, everything else is pretty
lacking
negative. But lacking in everything.
Anything else. Yeah, okay.
And then it turns out...
But he's quite good looking.
He's always been a bit naughty. He steals stuff. So he'd stolen a teacher's wallet at one school. He steals from the rich. He takes things.
Klepto. Yeah. He's a good-looking klepto, and he's no Robin Hood.
I think what's happened is he's being pushed so hard by his mum as well. There's a lot of pressure on him to perform and to maintain these positions in this school. And, she's saying, well, I've done this for you and this has got to happen. And you could really be someone that, she's got to get him married.
You could have been a contender.
The right job, married to the right family. And then all of a sudden they'll have made the big leap. So he's getting pressure from her. Dad doesn't even really seem to warrant a mention. And in fact, the detective, whose surname is Sheehan, says that when they start investigating, he says, oh my God, turns out I know the father. He's been drinking at my dad's bar, like they own an Irish pub, the police family. And he said in all of the years, he's never even mentioned that he had a son. So it's quite unusual background.
That's weird.
He's not,
it's
weird.
Weird.
This kind of pretending where mum's super keen on getting him connected. Dad's down at the Irish pub drinking and probably not on the scene quite so much. They're still together, I think.
That Dorian's, what was it called? Dorian's Red Hand.
Red Hand, yeah. They're not there. They're at Sheen's.
That's an Irish thing.
Is that Irish as well, is it?
Yeah, it's an Ulster thing. It's a representative of a symbol. Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Well, there you go. I didn't know that.
Dorian, no, but the Red Hand is. Mm.
So can you believe that there's all this sort of, clamouring by mum and the reason that he's went up one school after the next, it starts to paint a picture of someone that's not as well connected and as rich as perhaps was portrayed. And so what the police are then doing, they take his like Rolodex or whatever else, and they contact all the kids, all the different contacts in there. And at first people are really, really reluctant to speak. And they're like, no, he's great. He's a great guy. And they kind of protected themselves, I guess, as much as anything. And then over time, I think they find out that they put the photos of her throat across the table in front of them. Because remember, they were friends. They knew them all going, is this the kind of thing that you think he would do that accidentally killed her. And they're like, all right.
Jesus.
And so from that point, they start to crack a few of them open. Turns out Robert has been a drug addict since he was 14.
Okay.
He's been in and out of rehab with mum's knowledge, because obviously they're sending him across to like Utah or whatever else, and then they come back, wherever it is that you go to.
Someone's paying for that.
Arizona. Yep, someone's paying for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then at one point, they make a call to one of the kids, and a mum answers the phone. And she said, I'm just wanting to speak to your child in relation to Robert Chambers. Do you know him? And she said, I don't want anything to do with him. He's bad. We've already had a run-in with him. Turns out her daughter was going on a date with him, and she brought him to the house, and he said, I'm just going to go upstairs. They had seen him. No, they'd seen him come into the house, like the doorman downstairs had let them in. She said, I saw him when he arrived, and she said, he's striking looking. They went upstairs. He said, could I go to the toilet? And then he disappeared, and he'd stolen her the daughter's Amex card. Then just they didn't know. And it wasn't until like the following day or the day after they get a call from Amex saying, do you know where your daughter's Amex card is? And she said,
at Macy's?
No. At the moment, yeah, it's downtown. It's been here, there and everywhere.
What?
And he and another guy had taken the credit card and gone on a shopping spree. Anyway, so...
Something not right about this guy. Like, it's not like he wasn't going to get caught doing that.
No. She calls Mrs. Chambers, Phyllis, and says, I'm calling because your son has stolen my daughter's credit card. The police have just called. And she says, okay, well, you've got to understand he's got a big
she's
problem
a
with drugs.
piece of work. I don't like her.
We will sort this out. He will be on a plane tomorrow to rehab. We'll reimburse you for the money. Please just don't contact the police. And when the lady gets the check, the name on the bottom of the check is someone's dad, and the boy that was with him. The dad at the time ran the Cartier shop in New York. So there are all these people, these kids just running wild. This kid, the other kid was stealing as well with him, spending money. They're just little assholes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Totally doing whatever else. Then when that sort of came out, then they knew they had this other angle, right? So there's drugs and this theft. Then they started talking to the gang, and they're like, oh, yeah, now that you say it, yeah, he did steal quite a lot, actually. And they're like, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, like if we had a party, it was known that he would quite often steal parents' fur coats or jewelry or whatever else. Like no one gives a shit.
Well, because were they so rich that no one cared?
Yeah, no one gives a shit. The kids don't. Like, I don't want to get in trouble at a party. I don't know. He would crawl into other people's apartments who were like next door.
He's a big guy to be
because he knew they were out. Yeah, well, get into other apartments. Good boy. Big crawl. You notice that crawling. You're like, Spider-Man's put on a bit of weight.
Blowy I've seen in a long time. Yep.
He's pretending to be something he's not, and they also said maybe there's this issue with him kind of being, angry at the people who are so rich because he's not, and he's got to work so much harder to try and be part of that crew.
You don't actually have to be part of that crew, but...
Correct. So,
I bet his mum told him he had to be part of that crew.
I know.
She would have put a lot of pressure on him by the sounds of it.
Did. I'm sure Phyllis did.
Right. So... After, he's been he's lied and he's in Rikers or whatever else. Let me tell you a little bit about the trial. Where to start? There's all these little tidbits of things that I also know. Like apparently when he was finally allowed to see his dad after he'd been interviewed just before he was probably had just been arrested actually. Apparently he said, that fucking bitch, why didn't she leave me alone in front of the police?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Things like he'd said that she'd gone to buy cigarettes and his lies she didn't smoke. There was just a whole host. It was all just lies. But, there was a quite interesting story. Somebody who was the Archbishop of Newark in New Jersey, he was one of his referees kind of thing because he'd known him growing up. And then it was only like years later that same guy ended up on sex charges himself. But, they were trying to get all these people lined up to sort of be on his side. And there were some people, like the people at the bar were the people who put up the bail to start with. So it took quite a lot of time for, like, there were people that were absolutely against him from the beginning. And there were other people who were just like, he would never do this. And they were like, oh, no, that's just not him. He's a lovely guy. And they'd speak to girls who'd gone to his school. They'd be like, oh, my God, the whole school had a crush on him. They were just still, like, under this sort of spell. Okay, so when it went to court, the Levins were devastated because Jennifer's character was dragged through the mud. She was painted out to be this promiscuous, desperate, like after the hot guy, because, you know, he was so good looking and he could have anyone, and she was just too keen, and he, you know, she just was trying way too hard, you know, and he had this other beautiful blonde girlfriend who was for a better connection. Like, they just used all of these angles just to paint this awful picture of some poor girl who ended up, I mean, the marks on her neck are just unbelievable. You know, the eye bulging out, her teeth were loose, very good for trying to get him off her, kind of thing. Just horrendous. So Robert Chambers was charged with and tried for 2 counts of second-degree murder. His defence was that Levin's death had occurred during rough sex. Now, apparently, that was kind of the beginning of this rough sex as a defence. And so there was one other case, Jack Lippman, that was a guy. He had defended someone else. Jack Lippman is this mastermind kind of lawyer, and he'd used a temporary insanity, but he was going to find any angle. But introducing this rough sex into the vernacular became a real thing. It's like, well, you know, if you're asking, you're on a death wish. If you want to have rough, because he kept saying, she took me to the park. She kept saying she wanted to have rough sex with me. So that was their defence. He was defended by Jack Lippman, that was the man's name I couldn't remember earlier, who had previously used a temporary insanity defence on behalf of Richard Herron for the murder of a Yale University student. Lippman claimed Levin was promiscuous, saying she had a sex diary and that her sexual history was admissible as evidence, prompting headlines such as, "How Jennifer Courted Death." You know, it was stuff like that just was suggesting that it was all on her.
All victim blaming. Yep.
So Chambers' trial began on January 4, 1988. So remember, the crime happened about 18 months prior to that, and it lasted 13 weeks.
That's quite long, is it?
Yeah.
Feels long.
Yeah. It feels long, yeah. Alandi testified on February 9 that pinpoint hemorrhages observed in the soft tissue around Levin's eyes could be caused by a constriction of her neck and an indication that she had been strangled.
Mm-hmm.
When Chambers' attorney Jack Lippman suggested on cross-examination that Chambers could have choked Levin in an arm lock that could cause death in seconds, like accidentally when he was trying to get rid of her, and that the marks on her neck could have been made when she quickly moved her head from side to side and struggled for air, Alandi said that while such an occurrence was possible, this did not occur in Levin's case. She also stated that while some of the injuries on Levin's neck could have been caused by Chambers' wristwatch and shirt rather than his hands, her injuries overall were not consistent with the scenario Lippman described. And this is when things got a little bit desperate. So when the jury failed to reach a verdict after 9 days of deliberation, everyone was just in pieces. Well, the Levins were in pieces. The prosecution and Chambers agreed to a plea bargain. He pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter, which carried a sentence of between 5 and 15 years. He was also required to admit that he intended to hurt Levin sufficiently to cause her death in court. He had to say that. During his sentencing that April, he stated in court, "It breaks my heart to have to say that. The Levin family has gone through hell because of my actions, and I am sorry." That was it. And he received a sentence for just 15 years in prison.
At least they gave him the maximum, not 5 or something. But
true. But
and you will be maybe pleased to hear that he served all 15 years. And the reason was because he had so many infractions whilst he was incarcerated,
prison,
that he didn't get any time off for good behaviour or anything like that.
Not a model prisoner.
Absolutely not. He
right.
was a real dirtbag in prison. He attacked prison guards. He was caught doing drugs. Awful. He spent apparently quite a lot of time in solitary confinement.
But they would have all provoked him because he was so good looking, right?
Well, apparently there probably would have been that. Not quite so good looking when he came out of jail, trust me. So where this gets kind of it's been pretty interesting, but where it continues to go. So he was released from prison on February 14, 2013, having served the entirety of his prison term due to the numerous infractions. Unsurprisingly, his release was a media circus. There were reporters staked out everywhere. There was like a Dateline NBC interview the same day. And, again, people are just still fascinated by this. What happens after that? In 2005, he pleads guilty to a misdemeanor drug charge and he's given a sentence of 90 days in jail. So nothing major. However, On October 22, 2007, Chambers is yet again arrested, this time in his own apartment, and this time he's charged with 3 counts of selling a controlled substance in the first degree. Basically, he gets caught selling drugs to police officers.
Trafficking.
Yes.
Trafficking?
So, dealing, yeah.
Dealing, sorry, yeah.
And so he has a long-term girlfriend by this point, her name's, if you're interested, Sean Cavell, and she gets arrested as well. Cops said that this time he's 41 and he struggled with officers at the time trying to sort of, avoid being arrested. And then they speak to the Linda Farstein again, who was a lady who had been on the prosecution all those years ago, and they ask her what, her view is on him being arrested again. And she said, "It doesn't surprise me. I always believed his problem with drugs and alcohol would get him in trouble again. He's had the opportunity in prison to detox and take college courses to straighten out his life, but that clearly is of no interest to him. He's learned nothing in the last 20 years.
God, it's quite a statement when you think about it.
Yeah, so interestingly, on September 2, 2008, he was sentenced to 19 years on the drug charge.
Shit,
so he got more
time for
than
drugs
he did for murdering. Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
And he is currently on parole, but he is out. But I couldn't really find anything to tell me where he currently is, although I'm sure it exists.
He's on parole? When did he get 19 years?
He got 19 years in 2008, and he was released in 2023. He was released. Okay.
Good behaviour.
And that is the story of the Preppy Killer. So my sources were, before I forget, there is a fabulous mini-series. There's like 5 episodes. And I've seen this before and I've ignored it. I've never sort of thought, I thought it was all too obvious, and I thought, it'd be one episode. I thought because I'd read a bit about it before, and I thought, it's just some rich kid who murders somebody and there's not much to it. Yeah. But the way this was done, it was really, really interesting. That so many people came forward to speak that were there and involved. Like, it was a lot of real testimony as opposed to just recreating situations, whatever. So I found it quite riveting. So that's called The Preppy Murders, Death in Central Park.
Right.
And it's a 5-part miniseries. And where did I watch it? Maybe on Prime, I think. Nice. Yeah, Prime. It's on Prime. So I used that. And then there were a load of different... I thought this was quite funny. I'll see if I've still got it up. I was looking for different things about Robert Chambers now. The amount of times that man has been featured in, like, the New York Times is unbelievable. Where I had, like, there was, like, a list of...
articles related to him.
Yeah, like there must have been 50, and they were all like, he's done this, he's done that, more drugs. That was just crazy. He was a very busy boy. But anyway, so New York Times Magazine. I watched an episode of Dr. Oz, which was fairly recent. It was from the last couple of years, and it was recounting what had happened, and they had everybody now who's much older, but like who had been involved, like the detectives and whatever else, and how it affected them. And talking about it from sort of a psychological viewpoint of, was this guy actually somebody who was probably, they thought that he had like the profile of a serial killer. He had that kind of just
didn't care.
I don't care, and I'm,
a sociopath.
just different. Yeah. Obviously Wikipedia, there was Murderpedia. That was probably about it, really. I found the stuff most interesting with when they interview people, because there's still so many. Because they're kind of, as you pointed out, I did not make this connection because I was thinking they were older than us, but there's actually only a couple of years.
Yeah.
But the difference between being my 12 at that age and their 16 is like a night and day.
Years.
Yeah, downtown, Woonona versus Upper East Side, New York, for that age difference is, that's why I hadn't made the connection.
I was still reading,
and I
The
was
Lion,
thinking
the Witch and the Wardrobe, and
yes,
being more interested in sci-fi films and stuff like and Goonies than I was worrying about going to a club at any point. Yeah.
I've seen other people talk about that era who are from New York, who are now, in their late 50s, early 60s, and they had the most incredible youth. Like, it was unbelievable what they were allowed to do and get up to, and how much they loved the city and how cool it was. And, I don't doubt it, but different strokes, different folks. But, it's a very long way away from, 12-year-old Swanny, that's for sure. At that same period. That's why I was saying it was a different era, but it really wasn't.
It really wasn't. But I think the thing about it is when you talk about why was she in there, why did she do that, like the victim blaming bit of it. She was in a park with someone who was 6'5", who she knew, who she'd actually been going out with. So why would she imagine she'd end up dead?
Absolutely.
And the parents who thought, there's nowhere else for the kids to go, let them go and do whatever, but as long as they're together, they're safe.
Yeah.
Sounds like most of the time they were.
Yeah, it does actually, and they were certainly up to stuff,
Naughty, but
there's not. It's not that we weren't doing the same stuff here. Probably a little bit different in age. It just feels like it's on a bigger stage.
I didn't steal anything,
more money,
from
all the
house.
theft and all that bullshit. Yeah. People going to house parties. It's not massively different. It's just the affluence, I think, that takes it to another level sometimes 100%. Where you kind of get your head around, and that's why people are interested. But it was interesting from a media point of view. It was one of those first big stories where 80s, everyone was riding high and people were flashing their cash, and it was like, what's happening now? And, the world had sort of opened up in a way that, I don't know, it was all about excess, I guess. This is one of those things as well that I really probably played into the moment, as it were. So I can see why it sort of took off. People would have been so interested in there. Yeah, there you go.
Well, I feel like Clarkie's going to get pretty cranky about Phyllis. I mean, he does sound like a sociopath to me. Like that whole business of just hanging around.
Yeah.
I just waited,
Not helping in any way.
Quite dispassionately, just waited. And then when they come to the door and he's very like, oh yeah. And if you think this is bad, look at my chest. Yeah. I mean, just those sorts of things that you think, it's just not the normal behaviour of someone who accidentally killed someone.
No, I just think he honestly sort of thought that he was
above it.
Well, she above it. Clearly, she was all over me. I was trying to rebuff her. Yeah, what could I do? And he kept saying, she was a nice girl. She was nice to talk to. It's a shame.
It's a shame I killed her with one blow. Apart from the evidence being that
is quite interesting. When he's then one of the detectives is trying to get him to show him. He goes, "Show me." And so we sort of up on top. He goes, "Well, she's got my hands, and she's like this." And the guy's like, "You're huge." Oh, really? Yeah. So she's doing what? And you're like, "Oh,
oh, stop it!
Stop putting your undies around my oh, hey, stop that while you're straddling me facing that way. I was like, oh, God. And the thing is, I don't doubt for a second they were probably going, well, she thought they were going into the park for a shag. I mean, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning or something. What else are you going to do? Walk me home? Go for a shag? Who cares?
Not running
None of that's wrong.
Is there any suggestion of him? Was there a motive? I don't believe that it was rough sex gone wrong.
It was a violent hand job that was the most.
Exactly.
Like had she upset him before or whatever else?
Yeah, was there something else? Because I just feel like, or was he on drugs or something and he just lost it?
Well, he had not long come back from rehab. His mum wouldn't let him come and live with him. So I don't know how many times, this may not relate to the other, because he'd been to rehab so many times, but in the weeks leading up to this, he had checked himself out of rehab yet again, because he did this every time. He'd come back and she said, well, you're not living with me. So I believe he was living with the super. Isn't that the guy who lives downstairs on Ross, and he was helping out with odd jobs? So I don't know if that was even in the same building. He was helping out some super. So he was really pretending. He had no money. He had been kicked out of Boston University. That could have been a whole year before, I'm not sure, where he'd gone for one semester and then there'd been a theft of I'm getting accused. Maybe that was a credit card. But anyway, he'd stolen something there and got caught out. So he continually gets caught out for stealing. That's how he lives the life, right? Because he's got no real money. So no uni, no work, no home. So things were not great. And I think at one point he'd ended up at Alex's house. And then she tells this thing where she says he comes into the house and he's like really, a bit stressed out and saying he's exhausted. And she said he went upstairs to have a sleep on my bed. And she said, I thought he'd be there for like an hour. So we went up 4 hours later and she said, I'd never seen anything like it. The mattress protector, the whole thing, everything was saturated through. So I suspect he was probably having withdrawals. And she said, I had no idea at the time. And he said, oh, I think I'm getting a cold. And she said, I think my mum knew. And I thought, yeah, your mum might have had an inkling.
Mm.
But this was all around the same time. Things were starting to sort of come to a head, I suspect. So whether or not it necessarily related to Jennifer Levin, I don't think so. I just think it was he was kind of running out of excuses, and he was it just probably like it felt like it was closing in on him. It was all such a fraud, all bullshit, really.
It still doesn't strike me as a reason to kill someone. That's all.
No, absolutely
I just
not.
struggle with and the violence of that attack too.
And I think, which I find really odd, is given what he looked like, and given he was popular with his friends, even if he did all these other, they still tolerated it. I reckon he could have got away with, being on the fringes of that friendship group
forever
for a long time.
He probably would have married someone with a bit of money and stuff.
Certainly, some mum would have gone, look how good looking he is. We'll set him up with a job. Look at this.
Who cares about the rest of it? We've got that. He's got the genetics. Yeah. There's something we're missing in this story about what actually took place in that night, because to attack her like that, that's really violent. She's really fought hard to save her own life.
Yeah.
Unless they were having rough sex and it was going too far and she's trying to tell him to stop and he just lost his mind. I don't know. Anyway.
I think you're right that there's something that has gone on, whether she's called him out on his bullshit or whatever, that struck a nerve and got him angry. Something's gone on that obviously she wasn't able to talk about, and that's the problem when you have those situations where there's only two people there, one of them dies. It's all one-way traffic, and you can't trust a word he says, obviously.
No.
It sounds to me like, I think we've discussed this with a few of these sociopaths, where they actually are quite intelligent and they think they're smarter than everyone else. Except that he isn't. He's acting like he's smarter than everyone else, and what he says people will believe, but what he says just sounds ridiculous. Like there's nothing in any of what he says that makes me go,
well, he seemed to think that the police were pretty stupid.
80% true. Like, he's being so cool, calm and collected and telling a story about his arms being tied behind his back with his panties, and I had to slap her away or knock her away with one hand, and that accidentally killed her. So I just sat around and watched. But what do you think people are hearing when you're saying all of that?
True. It's totally plausible.
I don't think he cares. I think it's like, you just believe me. I'm telling you, so it's what happened.
And what a wasted life he's had too. Go to jail for that, but then keep going to jail. So he's been in jail for at least half of his own life at this point.
30 years or something,
15 and 19, is it? Yep.
Gosh.
I wonder if the 19, though, was based on the potential to reoffend and do what had happened earlier. So if nothing's changed and he's on that same trajectory, they might have just said, well, if we leave him, he'll end up killing someone again.
Don't know. I think it's more about drugs. They've got really crazy...
The zero tolerance kind of...
Yeah. They've got super over-the-top sentencing for drug offences, comparative to murder. And you could argue that by dealing drugs to a lot of people, drugs murder people, and a lot of people, like multiple people, not the one victim. So therefore it's not an over-the-top sentencing for it. But, it's interesting that all of his crimes subsequently have been around drug offences or theft and stuff, not related to violence or anything like that. So maybe it was just a moment where he...
Well, maybe she threatened to call him out on something that he'd done and he was worried about.
That's the bit I don't get. Didn't get a sense that there was any animosity between them, or that she was calling him out for anything. They were just shagging and she thought he was a bit of a loser. Yeah, I mean, it could have just been a moment where she said something that gave him the shits, or did something that gave him the shits. Like, I don't know.
And not I'm not saying that to justify it at all, but it just sounds like something has happened that has made him snap.
Yes,
and,
I'm sure.
Probably something he needed to hear. So whatever she was saying, if that did happen, was probably something that cut him to the bone, but was appropriate, for want of a better word. But he just didn't want to hear it.
Can I ask, Swanny, because you didn't actually go into the detail of it, which I appreciate, but did they determine that she'd been raped?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, this is just a very violent attack. Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, no. Because her bra and that was all pushed up and her skirt was... It's just... But they'd been
If he's
sleeping
raped
together.
her,
Yeah.
but if he's raped her, that's reason to kill her.
True.
From his
Yes.
perspective, that's motive.
So that she doesn't,
100%, so that he doesn't get
get rid of the witness.
done for rape. Of course, he gets done for murder because he's an idiot. But
No. It was just rough sex. Yeah, and that I can't remember, but one of us has done a story about rough sex as a defence before. Was it you, Clarkie? Oh God,
I don't think it was.
What are we up to?
Rough sex, but there was
Can't remember anything.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking more of is the Baldwin Society murders, where remember the bloke violently beat his ex-wife because she laughed at him, and there was that element of shame to the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just that's what I was wondering if it was something that she'd said or done that enraged him. But I think on the back of the bit about
the rape,
if it was.
Yeah, she could have said, no, I don't want this. And he just said, I'm doing it anyway, and raped her. And then you're right. And then thought, I'm just going to choke her to death because then otherwise she'll go to the police.
Yeah, or he might have just gone, we're in the middle of Central Park now and I'm the 6'5" bloke who's here to protect her, but actually I can do whatever I want now.
Who knows?
Who knows?
How very sad.
Terrible.
And I don't feel like he's remorseful. That's the other thing. I feel like from what you said, Swanny, he just was a shithead it's just a shithead of a guy by the sound of it. So maybe that's my sentence for him. I'm going to turn him into a literal shithead. He can just have it, instead of being someone who has spent his life sort of just trading off his looks and his whatever charisma he seems to have, I'm just going to turn him into like a Mr. Potato Head, but instead of a potato, it's shit.
Can you just replace his head with a shit emoji?
Yeah. A big poo emoji. There you go. Yeah, that's my sentence for him.
Nice.
A shit bloke.
It sounds like there wasn't much nice about him. He traded off his looks. People liked him if they liked the look of him, and if they got to know him, they didn't like him. That's what
it's not much to get to know by the sound of it, yeah.
Yeah, which would have made it very hard for him and his mum if she's trying to get him to not be a shit bloke and marry someone who's got a lot of money, and he just can't do anything but be a shit bloke.
I've just read this thing in like Rolling Stone magazine, and they're talking about the case and how Linda Farstein got sort of, done over, really, how she wasn't able to do a very good job of trying to represent Levin. Saying Farstein was unmoved by, she's trying to, depict him as the drug addict and sex fiend that we know he is, but she was unable to bring some of that to court. So,
and yet someone's apparently sex journal was okay.
She couldn't bring up his drug use and burglaries in court because he never took the stand for her to cross-examine. Also, Farstein was unable to present to the court the DNA testing she had done on Levin's jean jacket, which found evidence of Levin's blood and spit. Farstein revealed that Chambers had gagged and strangled her with the jacket, but DNA testing was in its infancy and the court opted not to bring it to its evidence. Meanwhile, Chambers appeared on the cover of New York Magazine kitted out like a Kennedy. While his attorney, Jack Littman, leaked false rumours of Levin's sex diary to the press. So that's what I was saying, like they did all these like really underhand kind of things that were headlines. And as someone was saying, before it got to trial, there were so many headlines. And the guy who was like it was a journalist for the New York Post or whatever else, he was saying at the time their circulation was 1.6 million every morning or something like that. He said that's the people who bought it, let alone the people who saw it in the newsstands and saw the headlines.
So how could it's just going to be biased immediately.
Correct. So all of that stuff was playing into this narrative of who she was and who he was. And I did read somewhere where they used the Kennedy thing where his mother saw him as a potential, look like a Kennedy. So why shouldn't he be treated as one and create a Kennedy-like
Why shouldn't he be one?
Yeah. Meanwhile, the girl likes rough sex and's got a sex diary and is promiscuous and awful and terrible.
Gross.
I don't know if that still happens as much. I couldn't tell. It'd be interesting to see, but it's a shit strategy, isn't it? To just sit there and slander someone so much when they can't defend it. Like
even when they can defend it.
Yeah, of course.
You'd like to think it's less than it was, but a lot of the reasons that women don't come forward on sexual crimes, etc., is
because no one will believe them, or they think they'll be in this sort of scenario where they'll be slut shamed.
I think that I do hope that things are a bit better. It felt like it was through another era, like just that all in. You can say whatever you want. Slut. That felt like now there'd be more.
Well, you can't
regulation
fat
around
shame people. You can't shame people anymore, right? Shaming's out.
Yeah.
I think even
I'm sure you still can, but you know what I'm saying is like there's lots of
happens,
you can't
but
say that, or you can't do that.
It's not as obvious, I think.
No, in the 80s,
you can't get away with
it. I reckon nowadays the jury would be wiser to that sort of thing.
I don't know.
People are more aware and more offended by making shit up and calling people things.
It all depends on the jury that they select, though, too. So the jurors are not this selection of jury, the three of us, you know.
No, I understand, but I think they'd be calling for some level of evidence of the sex diary. I just don't think you could make shit up without any context and people lap it up. I mean, I still think there'll be people who aren't as aware of us, of course, but I think generally in society people are a bit more street smart,
savvy,
and wise into that, and it could actually play out against the defence to sit there and make up too much shit without any evidence.
So any sentence for that defence attorney?
Oh, it'd be nice if there was some way of him being publicly shamed in all of the papers for being such a shit bloke and having no way of responding to it. Because, you know, they say you shouldn't speak ill of the dead. I don't necessarily believe that, but don't go making shit up to that whole thing of I don't give a shit what happens as long as I get my client off. That's not
in
okay.
Wikipedia, the opening paragraph for him says, Jack Theodore Littman, July 26, 43 to 23, 2010, was a criminal defence lawyer most famous for his, in quotation marks, blame the victim defence of Robert Chambers Jr., the Preppy Killer.
That's not maybe that is his own sentence to be famous for that.
Well, I certainly think in terms of Phyllis, I mean, with the exception of the fact that he didn't actually get it, I mean, that has played out beautifully. I think that she got what she deserved there. What a fucking silly woman to sort of allow so much of this sort of to go on and encourage it kind of thing. I mean, I think everybody wants the best for their child. Don't get me wrong. It's not like that's not a crime.
But it's how you go about it, and was it really about the best for her child or the best for her as well?
Oh yeah,
that's the bit I didn't like, that she was kind of ladder climbing in a societal sense through her child, or desperately trying to. And I don't doubt that she put a lot of pressure on him to be this or that or whatever to fit in. And it struck me as odd, obviously, that the father barely mentioned him and went down to the pub and drank. And I wonder whether he just didn't want a bar of all of that, because it sounds like she was
even if your son was, I don't know, if you had a 6'5" good-looking son, you'd think you'd mention it at some point, maybe down the pub. Even if you're going, oh, you know, he's really struggling with the girls, right? Lucky bastard. You'd say something. He'd never mentioned he had a son. This guy was like, oh, my God, I know his dad. He drinks at my dad's pub all the time. I've known him for years. Never mentioned it. Strange.
Yeah, I wonder how on board he was with the whole status climbing that Phyllis was going through too, because it sounds like a fairly full-on effort from her to try to make all of this happen. Well, she sounds
like a stage mum sort of thing, you know. It's sort of a stage mum for that environment. Yeah.
And if he's going, you know, I just want to live our life. I don't give a shit for that.
I'm just going to the pub.
Well, it sounds like he's just kind of checked out.
I'll leave you to it.
You do all of that shit. I'm fucking out.
I'm going to the
Irish pub. Yeah.
Hang out with my mates and not talk about
and
you.
I'm not going to talk about anything that happens at home.
Right.
Yeah. God.
Oh. All right. Any sentences?
I'm struggling with one for the attorney, but I do think some level of public shaming that is just absolute slander that he hates, that he can't refute. He has no platform to refute.
Well, he's dead now, so
let's go. kitty fiddler.
He has no way to refute it. I was thinking that, but I didn't want to say it.
Yeah, God. Maybe that. Maybe something like that.
Maybe not. Yeah, I don't know. He did have his obit. I did briefly read his obit, and he's had a couple of kids, and it was, that he was a loyal and good friend and a great father. So perhaps we won't say
complete asshole to strangers.
Complete asshole to strangers.
Maybe we can just update his Wikipedia profile to say he'll be remembered for being a complete asshole in the case.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of does say that without saying that.
Without saying it, but I don't know if it's something to be proud of. So you're right.
No.
Most famous for blaming the victim. And I think that is very much a statement of attitudes today, that we're not okay with it. And so that, the blame the victim defence that he's famous for, that's been called out on Wiki already. Yeah.
I think that's what I was kind of saying before, that people just would go, oh, I don't know that we're comfortable with that. And it could work against you nowadays.
I think it probably would, yeah. Yeah, okay. Swanny, anything from you?
No, I don't think I have got anything to add, actually.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Swanny. Interesting story. As we say every week, miss you already.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.